This story was sent to us by a real listener. It happened somewhere in East Asia, maybe in China, Japan, Vietnam, or Korea. They remember it clearly, and after you hear it, you will too. Welcome to Real VNightmare, where real people share the moments they'll never forget. This story was submitted to our channel by the woman who experienced it, Lily Zhang. The moonless night hums with the sound of a ceiling fan turning slowly over a quiet room. Inside, twin girls, no more than toddlers, toss and turn, their sleep disturbed. In the dim air, something shifts beneath the bed. A dark hand, broad and unnaturally cold, slides out and grips Lily's leg, dragging her toward the shadows. Lily was born into a family deeply steeped in spiritual tradition. Her mother, Zhang Mei, was known in her small village on the outskirts of Lijiang for her unshakable devotion to Buddhist practices and her uncanny sensitivity to the spirit world. People said she had the gift. She could sense things others couldn't. A lingering soul, a cursed corner of a house, a misaligned altar. Zhang Mei had already given birth to 2 sons, but she longed for a daughter. Desperate, she visited temples, made offerings, prayed during lunar nights, and even dressed her boys in girls' clothes to appease fate, dyeing their hair, braiding it, treating them like daughters. Her prayers were eventually answered when she conceived Lily and her twin sister. Despite a modest income from sewing custom dresses at home, Mei spared no effort for her girls. Each handmade outfit was sewn with care, each slipper trimmed just right. But this period of happiness was tragically short. When Lily was just 2.5, her mother passed away suddenly, leaving behind the fragile world she had tried to protect. Lily's earliest memories are surprisingly vivid, possibly sharpened by spiritual sensitivity inherited from her mother. She recalls strange dreams shared with her twin sister, dreams that defied logic. They would both wake at the same time, having seen the same shadow, heard the same whisper, or floated in the same ghostly hallway. People thought they were making it up, but Lily always knew those dreams weren't just dreams. One afternoon, while playing alone on her bed, Lily sat with her feet dangling off the edge. That's when she saw it, a thick, blackened hand emerging from under the bed. The skin looked burnt, and it moved with weight and purpose. Before she could scream, it grabbed her ankle and yanked her to the ground. She fell face first, too stunned to cry. Her body began to slide under the bed. Panic struck. She tried to scream, but her voice was caught in her throat. "Mom," she finally shrieked. "Mom." Then, just as the darkness threatened to swallow her whole, the bedroom door burst open. Her mother, her spirit, stormed in Ai's fierce voice commanding. Mi grasped Lily's arm and yanked her back, planting her feet as if she were pulling against a current. The shadow hand still gripped Lily's leg, but Mei struck it with the palm of her glowing hand and shouted, "Let go of my daughter, now!" With a shudder, the hand jerked and slowly retracted into the darkness beneath the bed. Lily blinked breathless. Her mother was gone again. The room fell silent, but the impression of her mother's warm hand remained on her arm, strong, protective. From that day on, Lily understood her mother had not truly left. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum, and let's slip quietly into tonight's story together. In the years that followed, the supernatural presence around Lily and her sister only grew stronger. Their father, overwhelmed by grief and responsibility, struggled to raise his children alone while attending university. The boys were sent off to live in a monastery in Dali, while the girls bounced between orphanages, nunneries, and even stayed with ethnic minority villagers in the hills. Eventually, an aunt, Zhanglan, the older sister of Lily's father, came from their ancestral village to care for them. She had barely settled in when she began experiencing terrifying sleep disturbances. Every night she was pressed down by something unseen. Her hair was pulled, her neck grabbed. But whenever she opened her eyes, no one was there. After 2 or 3 nights, Zhanglan understood. She knelt before the family altar and spoke softly. "I'm sorry. I'm here to take care of your daughters, I promise. Please don't test me. Just let me do right by them." After that, the nightly attacks stopped. Lily's spiritual world expanded quickly. One memory stands out: an afternoon nap on a thin mattress placed in front of her late mother's altar. She and her twin sister were restless, wriggling, and refusing to sleep. Then, from the corner of the room, something emerged. A man in a crimson general's uniform appeared. He wore a flowing, feathered helmet like those seen in traditional opera, and he carried a massive ceremonial sword. His presence was stern, commanding, even terrifying. He pointed at the twins and shouted, "Sleep!" Lily flinched, heart pounding. Her aunt rushed to soothe the girls, puzzled by their fear. She couldn't see what they saw. To calm them, she gently cupped their eyes and said, "Shh, just close your eyes. Sleep now. It's all right." But Lily peeked, and the general was still there, standing firm, eyes locked on hers. That night she obeyed. She closed her eyes, heart racing, and drifted into an uneasy sleep, knowing that she was never really alone. As time passed, the days of ghost generals and shadowy hands receded, but only slightly. They left behind an atmosphere of quiet tension, like a house still trembling after an earthquake. Then came the arrival of someone unexpected: Lily's stepmother. Her name was Jang Kim, and at first she was simply referred to as that woman. Family members had reservations, friends gossiped, even the children were cautious. When asked, "What if your father marries this woman?" Lily would answer without hesitation, "I'll chase her out with a broom," but life has a way of revealing people's true nature. Jang Kim didn't come bearing fancy clothes or empty promises. She came with a spoon, a bowl of rice, a bar of soap. She came with tenderness. She helped Lily with her lessons, cooked warm meals, brought cartoons to watch. Her food tasted like love, not just sustenance. And before long, Lily found herself laughing again. Then came the moment that changed everything. On the 4th day of the 4th lunar month in 1999, Lily and her twin sister climbed up to their mother's altar and lit incense. They pressed their foreheads to the cold wood and whispered, "Please let us call her mother." From that day on, that woman became Mom. The house felt it too. As if a lingering spirit had finally been appeased, the cold spots warmed, the creaking lessened, and the shadows seemed less curious. Jang Kim moved in the very next day. And oddly enough, or perhaps not so oddly, no more spiritual incidents occurred. There was something uncanny about the connection between Zhang Mei, the biological mother, and Jang Kim, the stepmother. They shared the same birth month, came from the same province, and even had the same middle name, Thi Kim. To Lily, it felt less like coincidence and more like divine orchestration. As if her late mother had sent someone to continue the journey she could not. But not everyone adjusted so easily. Lily's older brothers initially refused to accept Jang Kim. They kept their distance, spoke formally, and never once called her mom. Yet over time, as they saw how she cared for the girls, how she stayed up late tending to fevers, how she sat cross-legged, folding their worn clothes, they softened. Eventually, they too called her mother. Still, growing up wasn't easy. Lily and her twin sister had inherited a fragile body from their mother. They were often sick, small for their age, and slow to gain weight. At one point, both girls suffered from severe malnutrition and a persistent lice infestation after returning. From boarding school, Jung Kim took it upon herself to nurse them back to health. Cooking bone broth, cutting their hair short, scrubbing their skin until the lice were gone. She never once complained. Years passed. The sisters grew stronger. And with strength came the blossoming of their inherited talents. Lily in particular showed a keen eye for visual art and design, a gift likely passed down from her seamstress mother. Her twin, though different in temperament, was no less talented. When they eventually moved to Guangzhou for university, they stayed in an old family house that had stood empty for years. The place was dim, outdated, and strangely cold, even without air conditioning. That chill never left. Though renovations had been done years ago, the house still wore the signs of age like battle scars. Faded walls, flickering light bulbs, a constant musty smell that no incense could cover. Friends who visited often asked, "Why is your house so cold? It's summer." Lily shrugged. "We don't even have a fan on. It wasn't just the temperature. The house felt heavy, like something unseen was always watching from just out of reach. And it wasn't long before the house began to reveal its secrets. At night, while working late on design projects, Lily would hear knocking. Not from the front door, from inside. Light taps, then louder bangs. The sound of marbles rolling across the tile, a chair scraping the floor when no one was sitting. She assumed it was her brother upstairs, perhaps moving furniture or dropping tools. But one morning her brother marched next door and knocked angrily on the neighbor's door. "Were you dragging furniture around last night, could you not?" The neighbor blinked. "What are you talking about? No one stays here after 6 p.m. This is just a day office for security staff." Confused, her brother walked back in and opened the guest room where he had heard the noises most clearly. It was empty. No chairs, no marbles, no furniture at all. Even after Lily and her twin settled in fully, the disturbances continued. Sometimes it was just footsteps, other times it was much worse. One night, Lily's sister, normally a deep sleeper, woke up sideways on the bed, her head pointing where her feet should have been. She began complaining of nightmares of a man following her in her dreams. A man she could never clearly see. Only those with yin-yang vision, a rare ability to perceive spirits, confirmed what Lily suspected. "There's something behind her," they said, "but his face is too dark. We can't look long." It was around this time that Lily made a decision. One night when her sister was fast asleep, she whispered into the air, her voice quiet but firm. "If you have something to say, come to me. Leave her alone." She lay down and waited, her pulse pounding. Within minutes, she felt it. A cold wind brushed her cheek. When she opened her eyes, a thick, dark fog was forming in the corner of the room. It twisted and turned, rising like smoke, then lowered toward her bed. A voice deep and unearthly whispered, "I'm here now." Lily's chest tightened. Her limbs froze. She tried to move to speak, but her body was locked. She could only blink. And even that took effort. That's seriously creepy. The fog swirled into the shape of a man seated cross-legged at the foot of her bed. Dressed in black, face obscured by shadow, he simply stared and smiled. Lily's heart thundered in her chest. The air thickened, pressing down on her like an invisible weight. The man in black didn't speak again. He just sat there grinning. Lily's instincts screamed for her to run, to shout, to fight, but her limbs refused to obey. All she could do was close her eyes and pray. Even with her eyes shut, the image remained etched behind her lids, the swirling smoke. The faceless man, the chilling smirk. She whispered mantras under her breath, clinging to the teachings her mother had once spoken of. Slowly, painfully, the darkness began to loosen its grip. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, the shadow dissolved into a puff of smoke. But it left something behind. On her wrist, Lily felt a pressure, a cold circle closing around her skin. She opened her eyes and gasped. A bracelet, shimmering faintly in blue, was now clasped around her wrist. She hadn't been wearing anything when she fell asleep. That bracelet, she would later learn, was not just any ornament. It was a mark, a gift, a link. The following days were a blur of questions and unease. She shared what happened with her sister, who was both awestruck and terrified. It was then they decided to speak to someone who might understand. A local spirit medium from the countryside who had helped families deal with spiritual disturbances. The woman, after hearing Lily's account and examining the bracelet, nodded solemnly. "It's a spiritual imprint," she explained. "That entity didn't want to harm you. At least not now. It was marking you, binding you to something." But why, the answer came weeks later in a different kind of revelation. One not born of dreams or rituals, but of something deeply human. Lily's sister Daisy had always been different. From childhood, she struggled with focus, with school, with fitting in. Where Lily was precise and reserved, Daisy was wild and impulsive. Teachers called her disruptive. Relatives dismissed her as the difficult one. But now pieces began to fit. It started with an old village fortune teller, the kind who spoke in riddles and saw the world as layers of unseen currents. Lily visited the woman during a holiday trip back to their ancestral town. Upon hearing her full name, the woman frowned. "You weren't supposed to be twin girls," she said simply. "There was supposed to be a boy." The story unfolded like a hidden scroll. At the time of their birth, it seemed the spiritual realm had suffered a mishap. A soul, playful, undisciplined, had been meant to enter the body of a baby boy. But through a slip in the spiritual gatekeeping, it found its way into Daisy instead. The guardians of birth, known in folklore as Master Tai and Lady Mo, had been negligent, distracted even, and the wrong match was made. Daisy then was not exactly who she seemed. Her behavior, her struggles, even her sense of gender and identity, all may have stemmed from this early spiritual misalignment. The dark figure that had visited Lily, that was Master Tai. Not an enemy, but not a protector either. He had come to correct an old mistake, to oversee what he should have guided properly in the beginning. From that moment on, Lily's understanding of her twin sister deepened. Daisy wasn't simply difficult. She was carrying a soul that never quite fit. And despite the complications, Lily loved her sister fiercely. Their bond, in fact, defied logic. There were times when they'd experience the same pain, the same emotion, miles apart. Once, when Lily twisted her right ankle, Daisy fell at school the same day and hurt her left ankle. Same spot, opposite foot. They didn't just share birthdays. Their identification numbers, student IDs, and even some passwords seemed to align eerily. It was as if they were coded from the same spiritual matrix. In high school, they both cut their long hair at the same time. A symbolic act, one that seemed to reset something inside Daisy. From that day, Daisy grew calmer, more focused. She still had a mischievous streak, but it was tempered now, as if the wild spirit inside her had finally found its rhythm. Still, Daisy faced more than her share of hardships. She was born with a congenital heart condition inherited from their biological mother, and had been sickly since birth. The doctors warned the family to keep her from physical strain, to protect her from stress. But Daisy never wanted protection. She wanted freedom. When it came time for university, both sisters chose the same major, design, but pursued different paths. Lily focused on architecture, precise lines, and rigid rules. Daisy embraced visual storytelling and illustration. Her drawings, often bursting with color and surreal landscapes, carried a strange emotional weight, as if they were messages from another realm. Their father, still living in the countryside, often worried about Daisy's unusual path, her identity and what he called her sensitive aura. But over time, he came to accept her as she was. Bold, independent, perhaps a little odd, but undeniably kind. Daisy's gender identity had always been ambiguous. She moved freely between traditional expectations and her own understanding of self. For years, the family struggled to grasp her reality. Some resisted, some cried. Some simply didn't understand, but Lily always stood by her. When relatives scoffed, Lily spoke up. When teachers labeled Daisy a problem, Lily intervened. And when their father finally broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the uncertainty of Daisy's future, Lily was the one who told him she's not broken. She's exactly who she's meant to be. In time, acceptance blossomed. Even their father began to refer to Daisy with affection, pride, and humor. One night, long after their conversation with the medium, Daisy came into Lily's room, her face pale. "I saw him again," she whispered. Master Tai Daisy nodded. He wasn't angry. He just watched, like he was waiting. Lily squeezed her hand, then let him wait. "You're not going anywhere." And with that, they both laughed, soft, tired laughter, and went to sleep side by side like they used to when they were children. Their home in Guangzhou was supposed to be a place of focus and quiet, a space for creativity and study, but the house had other plans. The longer Lily and Daisy stayed, the more active it became. What once felt like an old, worn-down family property began to breathe with its own pulse. And that pulse quickened after midnight. The lights would flicker even after changing the bulbs. Shadows flitted just outside the corner of Lily's eye. Sometimes she would hear a dragging noise. It's like furniture scraping across the floor. But when she opened the door, nothing had moved. The air, always unnaturally cold, never shifted no matter how many windows were shut or heaters turned on. Even on hot summer days, guests would remark, "Why is it freezing in here? Is your AC broken?" And Lily would answer, with a weary smile, "We don't even have one." But what started as eerie soon became undeniable. It began with footsteps, light, quick ones, like a child running barefoot across tile. Then came the toys, or at least the sounds of toys, the unmistakable rolling of marbles, the rattling of spinning tops, the faint bouncing of a rubber ball. Except there were no toys in the house. Once Daisy was awakened by a giggle, a soft, childlike laugh coming from under her bed. She froze, clutching the blanket, listening to the sound fade into a breathless hush. The next morning, she told Lily. "You heard that too?" Lily asked. Daisy nodded slowly. It wasn't a dream. Even their older brother, who visited, occasionally noticed the disturbances. One morning, fed up with the constant noise, he stormed next door to confront the neighbors. "Do you people drag chairs around at 2 in the morning?" The neighbor blinked. "We don't live here. This is a daytime office. No one's here at night?" To confirm, the brother walked into the adjacent guest room, the one where the noises were always loudest, and opened the door. Empty. No chairs, no desk. Nothing but the silence of abandoned space. That was the moment the family could no longer pretend, and things only escalated from there. Each night, the noises grew bolder, louder, closer. Then came the dragging. At first, it was blankets slipping off the bed, then pillows, then Daisy herself. She would fall asleep at the head of the bed and wake up at the foot, turned completely around. One morning, Lily found her lying on the floor, face pale, arms sprawled as if someone had pulled her down. It happened again and again. The final straw came when a friend, someone with yin-yang vision, visited for dinner. As they chatted, she suddenly stiffened. "There's a man," she whispered. "He's standing right behind Daisy." Lily turned. "No, you won't see him, but he's tall. Dressed in black, his face, I can't look at it." The woman excused herself, trembling, and refused to enter the house again. That night, Lily sat Daisy down. "We have to do something." They contacted another spirit medium. This time, a younger woman who worked closely with monks in the region. She came to the house carrying incense, small offerings, and an aged compass. She walked through the rooms in silence, the compass twitching in her hand. "This house," she said, "has been abandoned too long. Energetic conflict with the land has created imbalance." She used the phrase Lily had heard only once before: energetic conflict with the land. Energetic conflict with the land, a situation in which a person's energy or spiritual alignment clashes with the natural or ancestral energy of a location. In East Asian beliefs, such conflict may lead to illness, misfortune, or spiritual unrest if left unresolved. The remedy, she said, was not to banish, but to harmonize. She gave them a series of instructions. Burn incense at dawn for 7 days. Recite Buddhist sutras before bed, and most importantly, invite benevolent energies into the home. Not all spirits were evil, she explained. Some were simply lost, bound to the house by memory, fear, or pain. That night they did as told. As the incense curled into the ceiling, Lily felt a shift in the air. It wasn't warmer exactly, but lighter, less suffocating. For the first time in months, the shadows seemed thinner, the giggles quieter, the marble sounds distant. It wasn't peace, but it was something close. But peace, as they would learn, was fleeting. Weeks later, after a brief calm, Daisy began acting strangely again. She spoke of dreams. Not nightmares this time, but visions of being followed by a boy with wide eyes and a missing front tooth. In the dream, he never spoke. He only stared. Lily sensed something had returned. Then came the final event. It was past midnight when Lily, half asleep, heard a sound she hadn't heard in a while. The metallic screech of the front gate sliding open. She sat up, heart pounding. No one should be entering the house at this hour. Footsteps followed, heavy, deliberate. They paused outside her bedroom door. She reached for her phone, her hand shaking, and texted a friend. "There's someone outside my room. I think it's back." The friend, startled, replied, "Get a knife, or a Bible, anything." But Lily did something else. She turned on a Buddhist chant from her phone and played it at full volume. As the rhythmic chants filled the room, the lights flickered, once, twice, then steadied. The footsteps retreated, and then the bracelet on her wrist shimmered blue. Daisy woke up minutes later, sweating and breathless. "I had that dream again," she said. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was trying to talk. What did he say? He said, "He's sorry. He chose the wrong body. But he wants to protect us now." Lily didn't know what to make of it. But she looked at the bracelet again, and somehow she believed it. The house never fully stopped its strange behavior. But the tension was no longer malevolent. It became familiar, like a cat watching from the windowsill, always there, but no longer ready to pounce. Years later, when Lily retold this story, she paused at this part. "Maybe it wasn't about ghosts at all," she said. "Maybe it was about a soul trying to find its home, and another soul trying to understand it." Though the air in their Guangzhou home had calmed, Lily and Daisy knew their journey with the spirit world was far from over. By the time they finished university, both sisters had grown into confident young women. Lily pursued architecture, her designs inspired by symmetry and silence. Daisy, despite her health limitations, threw herself into visual storytelling, her illustrations dancing with surreal colors and quiet griefs. But underneath their achievements lived an invisible thread, that spiritual bond forged in childhood and tested again and again. In 2015, that thread was pulled taut once more. It came in the form of a boy, or rather the memory of one. His name was Nathan Liu, a classmate from junior high back in the foggy hills of Lijiang. They were in the same class until 8th grade, when Nathan left school abruptly. His family had discovered he had leukemia, and he was taken to a hospital in Beijing for long-term treatment. Years passed. Then, just before summer break, in their final year of university, Lily received a message. It was from Nathan. "Hey, I have something I've always wanted to tell you," he wrote. "But I'll wait until you finish your thesis." Her heart skipped. Nathan had always been kind, funny, a bit reserved, but in a way that made people lean closer, curious. She remembered walks in the rain, shared art supplies, quiet corners of the schoolyard where they would sketch or talk about things too big for their age. She responded, "Deal, I'm almost done. Don't disappear, okay?" He never replied. A few days later, a mutual friend called. "Lily, Nathan passed away." The words hung heavy, unreal. Lily's world went silent. "No," she whispered. "He said he'd wait." In a haze of disbelief, she called his older brother. The silence on the other end confirmed the truth. Nathan was gone, just 20 years old. What followed was a darkness Lily had never known. The grief wasn't just loss. It was severance, a wound that bled without end. Her chest ached, her breath came shallow. She had never told him how she felt. Not directly. He probably never knew. And now, he never would. She fasted for 49 days, ate no meat, copied the Heart Sutra by hand each morning, prayed for his soul, whispered mantras in the dark, lit candles beside a photo that now carried more weight than any relic. Her parents, alarmed by her transformation, feared the worst. Her brother said, "Are you planning something?" "No," she replied. "I just need to honor him." She even sent his scarf, one she had knit for him the winter before he left, to his family. The days turned into weeks. Then came the dreams. In the first, she stood at the top of a misty hill, overlooking the city where they'd once walked side by side. It was night, but the sky was filled with stars, more stars than she had ever seen. She turned, and there he was. Nathan stood silently beside her. No words, no touch, just a presence. When she awoke, her pillow was soaked with tears. A week later, another dream came. This time he was leading her through a quiet street market, the kind that appeared only in ghost towns or childhood memories. Lanterns glowed, but there was no one else around. No sound, just the two of them. He turned to her and finally spoke. "Go back." That was the last time she saw him in her dreams. Years passed, but the ache remained. Lily would often walk past his old home in Meizhou, formerly Thaibin, during her visits to the countryside. She would pause by the gate, looking in, never daring to knock. Then, in the spring of 2020, something shifted. It was the anniversary of his death. Lily, now working full-time, felt a tug in her chest. The same old ache, but sharper, more urgent. She booked a ticket to Meizhou. Nathan's family welcomed her warmly. His mother hugged her tightly, weeping. His older brother smiled and said, "He would have been happy to see you again." They took her to his grave. She knelt, lit incense, whispered all the words she had never been brave enough to say. Then, as they turned to leave, his uncle approached, face pale. He's here," he said. Inside the house, Nathan's spirit had entered his mother. At first, no one realized it. She simply clutched her stomach and winced. Then came the change. Her posture shifted. Her voice dropped, and her eyes looked straight at Lily. "Why did you come?" he asked. "I had to." Lily said, voice trembling. "I promised." "You shouldn't have. I tried to stop you." Tears streamed down her face. "I couldn't forget." "I never will." Then softer, the voice whispered, "Please forget. You have to live." Lily dropped to her knees. "Just one visit," she begged. "Let me go once and I swear I won't return." There was a pause. Then, as if reluctant but understanding, Nathan's spirit loosened its grip and retreated. His mother slumped forward, sobbing. The house exhaled. That night, Lily stayed awake, staring at the ceiling of a house she had once only seen from the outside. For the first time, the lights in the hallway stayed on without flickering. And in her chest, something long locked away, some ancient knot, began to unravel. The next morning, she prepared to leave. As she packed, Nathan's older brother stopped her. "He left something for you," he said, "a box." Inside a notebook, a pressed flower from their childhood garden, and a letter. Unsent, unsealed, unfinished. But at the bottom, one sentence in neat handwriting, "If I get better, I'll find you." Lily closed the box, gently cradling it in both hands. "I found you first," she whispered. Lily returned to Guangzhou with the wind in her chest. That strange hollow ache that follows deep release. The city felt louder now, more mechanical, its noise grinding against the softness left behind by Meizhou's memory. But in that contrast, she realized something: she hadn't brought Nathan's sorrow back with her. Only his blessing. Her work picked up. Commissions grew. Clients responded not just to the clean symmetry of her designs, but to the emotion that pulsed beneath them. Her professors called it soul-driven geometry. Lily didn't explain why. Daisy, too, seemed different, more grounded. She had found a rhythm in her artistic path, turning her personal struggle into vivid visuals that earned her national attention. Yet she still carried the strange spiritual pulse that had always marked her. That echo of a soul meant for another life. One afternoon, as they drank tea together by the window, Daisy suddenly asked, "Do you believe we're haunted?" Lily blinked. "By what?" "Not ghosts," Daisy said. "Just moments, feelings, versions of us that never finished living." Lily thought of Nathan's letter. She thought of Master Tai, the bracelet, the smoke that had once laughed from the foot of her bed. "Yes," she finally replied, "but maybe not in a bad way." Around that time, the bracelet began to glow more often. Subtle pulses of light like a heartbeat. It didn't happen at random. Only during moments of intense clarity or emotion. The sisters began to call it the reminder. Still, there were signs that the world beyond had not completely moved on. During a lunch with friends, Daisy suddenly froze her fork, hovering mid-air. "He's back," she said. Lily knew who she meant. Master Tai. That night, Lily dreamt of a field bathed in moonlight. In the center stood a man in ceremonial robes. Tall, composed, his hands folded behind his back. He didn't speak, but his presence held a kind of finality. "You've watched long enough," Lily told him. "We've done what we could." He nodded once, then vanished. From that moment, the bracelet stopped glowing. Some might have been unnerved by that, but to Lily it was peace. A signal that the watch had ended. The unfinished business had been acknowledged. But life, as always, was not linear. 1 year later, their father fell gravely ill. His kidneys began to fail, and he was moved into a long-term hospital. The sisters rotated their visits. Days blurred into weeks. Hospitals with their sterile scent and fluorescent hum became the new setting for their lives. It was in that hospital room that the next chapter of their spiritual journey began. Not with shadows or cold breezes, but with a chance meeting. One evening, as Daisy sat by their father's bedside, she struck up conversation with the patient's daughter in the adjacent bed. The woman, middle-aged and soft-spoken, mentioned her family's business. "We carve Buddha statues," she said. "We work with stone and wood. It's more than art. It's spiritual alignment." Daisy's interest piqued. Over the next few days, they spoke often. The woman shared rituals, prayers, and stories. She taught them how to thin a statue properly, to invite a spiritual presence into a home with reverence and responsibility. It was not just decor. It was a welcome. When their father stabilized, Lily and Daisy followed through. They visited the woman's workshop. There they chose a statue of Guan Yin, the goddess of mercy. Carved from white jade, her face serene, her eyes eternally half-lowered in compassion. They brought her home. The ritual was simple incense prayer, a clean space. But the moment the statue was placed in their living room, something shifted. The house grew quiet. Not dead, but calm, like a forest after rain. Later that week, they brought their biological mother's spirit altar down from the attic. Carefully, they cleaned her photo, refreshed the offerings, and whispered greetings like daughters returning from war. "We're still your girls," Lily said. That night, neither sister had nightmares. Weeks passed. The quiet remained. There were still the occasional creaks. Old houses groan, but the malicious edge had dulled. The temperature rose. The lights stopped flickering. Even the neighbors commented, "Your home feels brighter now." The girls never claimed credit. They just nodded and smiled. Then came the final revelation. Daisy, always curious, visited a different spiritual advisor. One known for reading a person's past life resonance through physical vibration. The woman held her hand for a moment, then looked Daisy in the eye. "You were meant to be a boy," she said softly. "But the gatekeeper made a mistake. You landed where you could." Daisy didn't react. She already knew. But now it was said aloud, and somehow that made it final. The woman continued, "The one who followed you, the spirit you've seen, that's your karmic observer. Not to hurt you, but to guide. He'll leave soon." "Will he return?" Daisy asked. "Only if you forget who you are," the woman said. From that day forward, Daisy didn't ask about the bracelet. She didn't check for shadows or wait for dreams. She lived, drew, laughed louder, cooked noodles at midnight and left her room messy. Lily watched her grow into herself. Wholly unapologetically, years later during an autumn walk, Daisy stopped mid-step. "You know what's weird?" she said. "I think the haunted part of our story wasn't about spirits." Lily raised an eyebrow. No, Daisy smiled. "I think we were haunted by the love we didn't understand. But now we do." Lily didn't say anything. She just reached out and held her sister's hand. In silence, they walked forward. Two souls once misaligned, now perfectly side by side. Not long after their father was discharged from the hospital, life resumed a gentle rhythm. The sisters, now mature and deeply grounded, chose to stay in the same house in Guangzhou. The house that had once rattled with shadows. But that house had changed. Or perhaps they had changed. On some nights when Lily worked late on architectural plans, she'd pause and listen to the silence. It wasn't empty. It was full of memory, of breath, of echoes that no longer threatened. In a strange way, the house had become a companion holding their past without judgment. Daisy's career also bloomed. She began to get requests from overseas clients. Her dreamlike art touching a chord with people far beyond her hometown. Her work often featured floating lantern staircases that led to clouds, and twin girls standing beneath constellations. People called it magical realism. Lily knew better. But the story didn't end there. One year during the Qingming festival, a day for honoring ancestors, the sisters returned to Meizhou to tend their family graves. They visited their grandparents, their uncles, and finally their mother's resting place. It was quiet, the cemetery bathed in a soft golden light. As they lit incense and laid fresh flowers, a breeze swept across the hill. Lily felt it swirl gently around her like a shawl placed on her shoulders. She turned and whispered, "We're okay, Mom. You can rest now." Afterward, they stopped by Nathan's grave. Lily knelt alone, her palms pressed together. "I kept my promise," she murmured. "I didn't come back until now. And I'm still here. Living, growing." She stood, and in the silence thought she heard a whisper, "Good." That night they stayed in Nathan's old home as guests. His parents had grown older, but were just as kind. After dinner, Nathan's older brother pulled Lily aside. "He left something with us. A message. Said if you ever came back again to give you this." He handed her a photograph. In it, Nathan was sitting on a bicycle, smiling awkwardly. Behind him was a mural Daisy had painted during their school years. A pair of white birds flying above a school gate. On the back of the photo was a scribbled line in Nathan's handwriting. "If you're reading this, then I kept my end of the deal too." Lily smiled, tears pooling. That night she didn't dream of him. She didn't need to. Back in Guangzhou, something curious happened. The bracelet. For years it had shimmered only during moments of spiritual intensity. Now, it was glowing again. But differently. Not pulsing, not warning, just glowing like a candle left burning at a windowsill. Daisy noticed too. "Maybe it's not a bond," she said. "Maybe it's a key. To what? To memory, to closure, to every version of us we used to be." They left it at that. Later that month, during an alumni gathering, Lily spoke with a former classmate, someone who had always been fond of Nathan. The girl leaned in and said, "You know, he really did love you. He used to write your name in his sketchbook, always in blue ink." Lily didn't cry. Instead, she asked if she could see it someday. The girl nodded. A few weeks later, a package arrived, Nathan's sketchbook. It was filled with portraits, doodles, and tiny notes, some silly, some hauntingly thoughtful. On the last page was a half-finished drawing. A girl in a long white qipao, her hair flowing in the wind, standing under a crescent moon. Qipao, a traditional Chinese dress often worn in rituals or formal occasions. In this context, it was a white ceremonial version linked to funerals or ghostly imagery. Beneath the sketch, a sentence I never got to see her wear one. Lily closed the book and looked toward her wardrobe. Weeks later, at a local shrine, she walked alone in a soft white qipao. Simple, unadorned, respectful. She carried no incense, no offerings. Just her breath, her heartbeat, her presence. As she lit a single candle and bowed, she whispered, "Now you've seen me." And then the bracelet dimmed. From that moment, Lily no longer wore it. She didn't need it to remember. The seasons passed. Guangzhou shifted through monsoon rains and crisp winter breezes, and the house where Lily and Daisy lived remained quiet. Not the stillness of emptiness, but a calm earned after years of turmoil. It no longer carried the energy of a battleground. It had become a refuge. Life, however, continued to surprise them. One late summer evening, Daisy returned home with eyes wide and stunned silence on her face. She set her bag down carefully, then looked at Lily. "I think I met someone," she said. Lily raised an eyebrow. Spirit or human, Daisy laughed. A real laugh, not strained by worry or ghosts. human, I'm pretty sure. He was kind, gentle, and saw Daisy not for her past or her complications, but for her present self. For the first time in a long while, Daisy allowed herself to feel seen. They walked slowly through parks, shared street food beneath neon lights, and stayed up late talking about art, philosophy, and oddly, fate. He asked about my bracelet, Daisy said one night, holding the charm she'd started wearing. A small silver ring she'd fashioned into a symbol of her own journey. What did you tell him, Lily asked? That it came from someone who almost never arrived. Lily smiled at the answer. It was honest in a way that didn't require explanation. And yet, even as their lives unfolded gently, the world of spirit didn't vanish. It simply transformed. One afternoon, while visiting their old family property in Lijiang, Daisy stood in the yard where she and Lily had once played. The place had been sold years ago, but the new owners allowed them to visit. The garden was overgrown, the bamboo thick and creaking in the wind. Daisy paused near the gnarled tree at the edge of the yard, the same one where Lily had once seen the faceless man. She tilted her head. "Do you feel that?" she asked. Lily nodded. There was something in the air, not menacing but alert. From behind the bamboo, a shadow passed. They didn't chase it, didn't speak. They simply stood acknowledging that some places remember who walked through them. Later that evening, back at their hotel, Lily asked, "Do you ever think we'll fully be free of it all?" Daisy looked out the window, the city glowing below. "No," she said, "but I don't think we need to be. I think we just need to learn how to live beside it." That fall, Lily had her own revelation. It came not from spirits or dreams, but from a conversation with a tarot reader in a tiny tea house tucked into a narrow street. The reader, a young man with quiet hands and ink-stained fingers, laid the cards out slowly. "You've been carrying someone with you," he said. Lily didn't answer. "He left early. But he still walks in the wind behind you, not to guide, just to witness." She looked down at the final card, the star. "Hope," he whispered. It was the simplest reading she had ever received, and somehow the most profound. She walked home that evening through an alley of lanterns, letting their soft light pattern her skin like scales of gold. When she returned, Daisy was asleep on the couch, curled up with sketchbooks scattered around her like petals. One of them was open to a page half filled with sketches of their childhood home. Their mother's altar, the smoke curling from incense sticks. In the corner, Daisy had drawn two girls, hand in hand, walking toward a distant moon. Lily didn't wake her. She just sat beside her, placed a blanket over her shoulders, and listened to the steady hum of the city outside. That night she dreamt of Nathan once more. Not as a ghost, not as a vision, but as a memory. Standing beside her in school, laughing softly as he scolded her over a crooked drawing. It was quiet, warm, and wonderfully mundane. When she woke, the sun was already high, filtering through gauzy curtains. The bracelet on her nightstand had caught the light and cast a single, gentle beam across the floor. She slipped it into a drawer. Not to forget, but because she no longer needed it close. A month later, as autumn deepened, they made a decision. They would sell the Guangzhou house. Not because they feared it, but because they had outgrown it. It had done its part, protected them, tested them, carried their fears like a silent witness. But now it was time to begin again, somewhere untouched. They found a modest apartment near the river, one with wide windows, tall plants, and sunlight that reached every corner. No flickering lights, no cold patches, just space. As they unpacked, Lily placed the Guan Yin statue on a shelf near the window. Daisy placed their mother's photo beside it. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. That night, as they lit a candle and drank tea on the balcony, Daisy looked up at the sky. Cloudy, starless. "I kind of miss the ghosts," she said. Lily laughed. "They're probably just resting. Do you think they'll ever come back?" Lily sipped her tea. "If they do," she said, "we'll be ready." The river apartment offered them something they had never truly known: neutral ground. It bore no weight of childhood, no residue of spiritual history. It was a fresh page. Unmarked, but not empty. Every corner was filled by choice, not inheritance. Each item placed had a purpose, not a memory. Lily took the smaller room, preferring its quiet shade in the mornings. Daisy claimed the one that caught afternoon light, calling it her drawing cove. Life settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. But the past, though quiet, was never gone. One afternoon, while sorting through old sketchbooks, Daisy found a folded letter she had once started but never sent. It was addressed to Master Tai. "I forgive you," it read, "and I release you." She hadn't remembered writing it, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. With a strange calm, she burned it on the balcony, watching the ash spiral upward in the golden dusk. That night, Daisy dreamed of a great blue field stretching endlessly before her. In the distance, a figure stood, tall, cloaked in black as always, but this time he bowed. Then he turned and walked into the horizon. When she told Lily the next morning, Lily only said, "Then it's done." And so it was. Later that year, a local gallery approached Daisy about hosting her first solo exhibition. The theme: Thresholds. The collection featured dozens of pieces. Layered doors, smoke drifting through lattices, children gazing into mirrors. In one, two girls stood at the base of a staircase that rose into a cloud shaped like a crescent moon. Their hands were clasped, their shadows long. At the opening night, Lily stood in the crowd watching strangers pause at that very painting, tilting their heads, murmuring things like, "This feels familiar," or "There's something haunting here." She smiled. When asked if the image was symbolic, Daisy answered, "Not symbolic. It's a memory. Just a soft one." The show was a success. A month later, Lily was invited to speak at a design conference. In her keynote, she opened not with slides or theory, but with a single sentence: "I used to live in a haunted house." But the most haunted thing was never the house itself. The audience leaned in. It was the memory of things left unsaid, people we loved too quietly, promises we kept in our sleep. That speech would be shared widely. But for Lily, it wasn't performance. It was release. From time to time, they still felt subtle shifts. A door creaking despite no breeze, a flicker in the corner of their eyes. But these no longer caused alarm. They had learned to tell the difference between a haunting and a reminder. On Qingming the following year, they made the trip back to Meizhou once more. This time, their father joined them, older, now quieter. He walked with a cane, but insisted on placing the incense sticks at their mother's grave himself. "She would have been proud of you both," he said, not looking up. They said nothing, just stood on either side of him and let the silence speak for them. Afterward, they visited Nathan's resting place one final time. Lily brought nothing. No flowers, no food, only her presence. She stood before the headstone and whispered, "I'm still here." In that moment, a gust of wind stirred the tall grass. Nothing dramatic, just a hush, like the air taking a breath. She closed her eyes and smiled. That summer, Daisy adopted a stray dog. A small, curious creature that barked at empty corners but never ran away. She named him Smoke. "He reminds me of someone," she said. "I hope he doesn't laugh like him," Lily replied. They both laughed. Eventually, the bracelet, once so central to Lily's experience, tarnished and dimmed, She tucked it into a velvet pouch and placed it in the back of a drawer. Not as a dismissal, as an honoring, because some stories don't need to stay on display. They live in us, etched in the soul, visible only in the way we speak, the way we care. The way we notice the flicker of a light and smile, not in fear, but in recognition. And so the story finds its quiet end. Not in terror, but in the soft echo of healing. It began with twin girls clinging to their mother's memory, wading through shadows too large for their age. It twisted through dark hallways, flickering lights, whispered names, and forgotten promises. But it never drowned them. Instead, it shaped them. Lily and Daisy didn't escape their past. They understood it. They invited it to sit beside them and said, "You may stay, but you may not rule us." That is the power of remembrance without fear. That haunted house in Guangzhou. It stood for more than just spirits. It stood for grief, for identity, for the ache of being born in between places. Between girl and boy, past and future, silence and song. Some ghosts vanish, others transform. Nathan never returned in dreams again, not because he was gone, but because he had been heard. Master Tai faded from Daisy's world the moment she spoke aloud what had once lived in silence. And the bracelet, that quiet circle of blue light, rests now not forgotten, but fulfilled. If you are listening now, maybe you too carry an echo. Maybe there is a name you haven't spoken aloud, or a promise you keep in your dreams. That's okay. As this story fades, take a deep breath. Look around your space. Feel your heartbeat. Know that not all hauntings are curses. Some are callings. So, tell us where you're listening from. Your city, your time, your midnight silence. Share it in the comments. We're always here. And remember, the horror stories of the East never truly end.
That was their story. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. But tonight, when the lights go out, just remember, not every silence means you're alone. New true horror stories every week. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have a story of your own, send it to us. You're not the only one who's seen things.